You are going to run your very own tabletop RPG. Once you find your committed players and choose which game you want to run, how do you go about learning that game well enough to facilitate play? In today's episode, we're going to cover 3 different ways to go about this very important responsibility, and which strategy you use will depend on your learning style and time commitment. Welcome to Claim to Game. We help tabletop gamers have a great time with friends to experience amazing stories. It can be overwhelming to start and run great games. Let's make it easier for you to play any game you want to have fun with your friends. I'm Clint.scheirer, and I've helped thousands of students in my career find their way to better themselves and better their game. With more than 10 years experience coaching, teaching, and developing easy-to-follow learning plans, I know I can help you too. It's time for you to make your claim to game. Hello and welcome back to episode 27, season 2 of Claim to Game, still a predominantly educational fun podcast in which I am daring to coin the word funjucational. It's like dribbling a basketball down the court in your Air Jordan tennies, taking your shot and sinking a 3-point winning shot with nothing but net. So, you've chosen your tabletop RPG that you want to play with your friends, your group, your table of committed players. As the game master, you hold a great power and a great responsibility. Imagine Uncle Ben from the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man films is staring into your very soul with his dying breath as you are left with the monumental task of actually figuring out the rules, the mechanics, the story, and not just for yourself, but also for your players, for whichever character avatar they adorn to play in your collaborative storytelling game. How are you going to do this? For me, I try to learn by gravitating towards the style in which I learn the best. American developmental psychologist Howard Gardner forged a path in modern education with his multiple intelligences for learning theory, which he developed from 1983 to about 2006. His work inspired and instructed educators and school leaders that there are many different ways to learn beyond traditional methods that had previously been used in educational institutions. Now, I'm sure that Gardner's theories on learning are just one piece of the puzzle of the human experience. There are other psychologists and learned people who think there are more ways to learn or who have completely different theories altogether. However, I do believe that these theories can provide a solid starting point to identify the ways that you best intake information and retain it, and then apply it to whatever task you have before you. For our purpose, the task is learning a new tabletop RPG well enough to run it for others as a game master. If you are unfamiliar with Gardner's 8 types of learning, here is a quick synopsis of each one. You can use these as a guidepost as to how you can best learn your game. Number 1, auditory learners. Learn best by hearing or speaking information. They often sort their ideas after speaking them out loud. Number 2, kinesthetic learners. Process information through body movement, control, and expression. Number 3, visual learners. Learn best through images, diagrams, charts, graphs, presentations. They often doodle and make visual notes to help them retain information. Number 4, verbal learners. Process information through words, often while discussing. Number 5, logical learners. Process information best by using rational, ordered methods. They prefer direct instructions, concrete rules, and categorized tasks and information. Number 6, social learners enjoy educational activities that involve group projects or working in teams. They gain deeper understanding of a topic through peer participation. Number 7, solo learners. As the name would suggest, they prefer to study alone. They thrive when they're by themselves. And number 8, natural or nature learners. They like to be outside while learning, and they're similar to the kinesthetic learners, but they want to be doing something hands-on that is also connected to the great outdoors. Before we move on, I have to say, I do not believe anyone is just one of these learning intelligences. I think that humans, as humans, we are a hodgepodge of them all to certain extents. So my hope is that by identifying how all these learning types fit into learning a tabletop RPG, you can find strategies that begin to work effectively for you and that also help you enjoy the process. Let's begin. The first way, option number one for learning a tabletop RPG that you are about to run is probably the most obvious. You read the entire book. Now, some people love reading, and it's the primary way that they learn. To them, reading a 200-page plus tabletop RPG rule book is like breathing or eating chocolate chip cookies. It's their happy place. If this is you, then you are likely a solo, visual, logical learner. Now, this doesn't mean that a GM who learns more towards group or verbal or auditory learning never reads the book. It just means reading isn't the final or first way that they grasp the game. Personally, reading has always been a struggle for me when learning games because I am not the fastest reader. A 200-plus page book takes me a whole lot of time to get through. However, far more often than not, pulling out a tabletop RPG book is the easiest way for me to get started learning the game, even if I want to fall asleep every 5 minutes. Now, for those of you who need to learn by doing, some games, these are kinesthetic learners, some games come with solo adventures where you can create your own character by yourself. You can run through your choose your own adventure style module, roll dice, experience the mechanics, all before you invite others to actually join your table. Now, this option is great if you are logical, like I said, kinesthetic, and you want to go at your own pace, being able to stop and then start as you're digesting the information. And if you're a nature learner, why don't you just do all this outside and immerse yourself in the setting? The second way that I found very helpful when learning tabletop RPG games is learning by listening. For those of you guys who are not visually inclined, how do you get a game that is written with rules into a book into the realm of listening and sounds? Well, the two tools that I have used are actual play podcasts or YouTube videos. That's my preferred method. It's an audio and visual learner's paradise. Now, I've found myself using YouTube videos when I'm trying to understand specific rules from a system. Short 5 to 10 minute videos explaining a mechanic that I don't understand, and it's a huge relief to me. An example of this was when I first started playing Pathfinder 2nd Edition, I wanted to better understand the 3-action economy. This is a mechanic that governs how many actions a player can take when it's their turn during combat. The YouTube channel How It's Played had a quick video just over 10 minutes that explained it in a clear, concise, and easy to understand way. I learned it quicker as an audio-visual learner watching that video than if I had just been reading it out of the core rules or on a web page without the sound. Actual plays, on the other hand, are another fantastic way that I've learned new systems or games. But for timing, I don't necessarily watch these actual plays on YouTube. If I'm watching a video, I have to be fully watching that video and not doing anything else when consuming that content of the game. Most games can take 1 to 3 hours to complete per episode, and I don't have time with a family and a job to take in video content. So instead, this is where I rely on the podcast medium. Most often, podcasting is a medium you only consume while you're going about the tasks of your daily life. Whether it's washing dishes, running, or driving your car on your commute, you are listening while living out your life. But even with podcasts, I only have so much available podcast listening time each week. To conserve time, I try to find one-shot games where the podcast host and the guests only play the game once, either one episode or for a few episodes. This way, I get a taste of the gameplay, most basic rules, and even enough to get started playing my own game without having to consume 100+ episodes and countless hours of a campaign in order to learn the game and the rules. Recently, I was listening to an episode of Smart Passive Income hosted by Pat Flynn, and he mentioned an interesting new tool called Notebook LM. It's an experimental AI tool powered by Google, which allows you to upload documents, and then the tool creates a short 5 to 10 minute podcasting summary of the material with a pretend podcast. Now, I've been working on a project which involves learning the Power Ranger RPG. And I got the PDF of the core rules, and having started reading through it, I wanted to get a quick overall summary and understanding of the game. So I was able to load the entire 200 plus page core rule PDF into Notebook LM. And then it summarized it for me. It took the key points of the Power Rangers RPG and put it into a 10-minute long podcast. Now, it wasn't a real podcast. There weren't real hosts on there, but there were two voices, a male AI voice and a female AI voice that sounded kind of real, actually. It was a little bit creepy, but it didn't sound like a robot. It sounded like two individuals having a conversation. I wouldn't say that I'm an expert on the Power Ranger RPG after listening to this pretend podcast, but I will say I did get the gist of the game. And it was a good primer for me to read the parts of the core rule book that I actually did need to go and read. Not only was it helpful for me as an audio learner, but as a social verbal learner, it felt like that itch was being scratched for the processing of information through words and discussion based on the conversation that these pretend podcast hosts were having. My recommendation, though, is to try to find a podcast with actual people talking about the rules, the mechanics, the system that you're trying to learn. I'm sure it's way better than Notebook LM. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any about the Power Ranger RPG, so I went the route of AI. Quick pause on the episode. Are you looking for games to join or people to join your tabletop RPG? Did you know the Claim to Game podcast has its very own Discord server? Would you like to find some friends, some like-minded people just like you who want to have a great time and tell amazing stories? You can do this in 3 easy steps. 1. Click on the link in the show notes to join the Claim to Game Discord community. 2. Navigate to the category called Community. And 3. Click on the channel called Look for Game. Either post your own desire to play a game or respond to somebody else's plea for camaraderie, adventure, and fun. Join the CTG Discord by clicking on the link in the show notes. Thanks, and now back to the episode. The third way that I have found most helpful in learning a tabletop RPG that I can run for my players is to learn by doing. Learn by doing with actual social interactions. Now, this final tip is more applying to social groups or social being with other people. But I just want to recap. For the solo learner, we mentioned that you can find a pre-made solo adventure that you can run yourself. You create your own character, you roll some dice, and you have at it. Now, if you need another person or people to learn, ask a trusted friend or fellow gamer to do a pilot game. To test out the mechanics in the gameplay flow, just set the expectation up front that it's not going to be perfect, that there are going to be more than your average times when you need to stop and look up the rules. I had the privilege to participate in the Starfinder 2e playtest recently with a group of gamers. It was fun. It was awesome. Shout out to my group if you're listening right now. Some rules were unclear, and as we went through the adventure, that was okay because in a playtest, the rules may still be unbalanced or overpowered or underpowered, and they need scrutiny. But the beauty of having real people play the game as they learn is that in the end, you're going to have a far superior game than if you were creating it or playing it in a bubble. And I believe the same holds true when you're learning a game. Learning the game with others may be far more effective than the GM trying to become a master of all things by themselves. 2 heads are better than 1. I mean, unless you're a goldfish, then you got a problem. One last thought about community. If you are a person who learns better with others in discussion, remember existing online communities like Reddit, Discord, Facebook, where you can go and ask questions for anything that seems unclear at first when you're learning. I have drawn extensively from the wisdom of gamers in all of these communities, and I am eternally grateful for the help that they've given me. Here are some final considerations. You don't need to know everything. Example, no wizard in your D&D game? Then you don't need to pore over all the rules and spells about the wizard. You can skip that. Identify only what you need to know for your game. Also, rely on your players to learn their bits. The weight of responsibility does not solely need to lean on you. Ask them to know at least the basics for their character and what their character can generally do when starting out. And give yourself some grace to stop, look things up, or if it's agreed upon by the group, make the best guess and look up the rule later to keep things going. Also, use cheat sheets. Give players one-page sheets with some core mechanics or rules that they'll need to come back to time and time again. For the GM, if you're in person, get a GM screen. This gives you the ability to hide your roles whenever necessary. Also, common mechanics and rules for your games are usually printed on the inside of the screen where you can easily reference them. Most starter kits come with some beautiful GM screens covered with the most amazing art from the genre of play. Now, if you're online, take advantage of the PDF version of your core rules. Control F to find keywords or whatever search function your device has. Some websites are entirely dedicated to being reference guides for your players. For Pathfinder 1E, Pathfinder 2E, and Starfinder 1E, Archive of Nethys is a complete online database for rules, mechanics, and lore surrounding those gaming systems. One last tip for online play: choose your virtual tabletop with the game you want to play in mind. Some virtual tabletops, or VTTs, lend fantastic support to certain games or systems and have built-in automation to make your life as the GM way easier. It also helps your players out too. Final thought: practice makes progress. This is something my wife and I tell our children all the time. Nobody is perfect. No game is perfect. So allow yourself to grow in your knowledge of the game over time. And over time, you will see yourself more and more familiar with everything about the game. It's going to become second nature. And don't forget to have fun. Games were meant to have fun. So have fun, damn it. Join us next time as we find the best ways to have great times with friends and experience amazing stories through tabletop role-playing. Have you ever wanted to start your own tabletop RPG group but just don't know how? What if you could follow 6 simple tasks to get your game up and running in just 30 days or less? Oh, you can, my friend. Download your quick free start guide either by clicking on the link in the show notes or by visiting claimtogamepodcast.com. Follow the 6 simple tasks outlined in the guide and go enjoy playing your best game. And may you keep having fun as we continue to make our claim to game.